Hey everyone, and welcome. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the Menendez brothers again. And this time, what I'm going to share with you is some material from the family. And before I get started, I just want to remind everyone, if you curse or say anything really mean or nasty, you will be hidden from the channel. And that means that you won't get to post anymore. If you insult me or anyone else on the channel, you will also be hidden from the channel. If for any reason you feel that you've been hidden from the channel and you're like, hey, I didn't mean that, or what have you, you can always contact us through support at Tori Hartman. It is at the top of the page, on the main page. And you can ask us to look at that and reverse that for you. So I just want to say that up front because I'm noticing that I've got some fab new people, and welcome if you are new. And one of the things I want to say about this is that if you're new and you're joining in, I look at a crime from many different points of view, and I don't just look at it as this person's bad and this person's right, or this person's wrong, and get into some of the details of the crime. But you're going to notice that I have a different take. So welcome, and let's get started. So what I'm going to share with you in this video is I want to talk about, and I have some of I have two different articles that I'm going to read you snippets of. You can Google it and find these pieces on the internet, and I think it's ABC that covered it. But both of the Lyle and Eric's aunts, his father's sister and his mother's sister, both agreed that there was abuse. They also, the cousins, and one of the cousins in particular said, yeah, there was definitely abuse. So why I'm sharing this with you is so that you can look up this information for yourself. But what I want to talk about is the real damaging effect of family abuse. And in some ways, if we really look at it from this point of view, if we take the context, let's take it, I want to say the assumption that the Menendez brothers, we know they killed their parents. This isn't like, oh, they didn't murder them. Yeah, they did. They shot them both. They used shotguns. They cried for an hour after they did it. The thing I want to put out in that is that this is not about whether or not they did it. They definitely did it. And it's not about whether or not they deserve to spend the rest of their lives in jail, which I feel my feeling on the sentence was that life with the possibility of parole would have been more appropriate in this particular case. Now, one of the things that I think that I want to open up for all of you is what is going on in a family that has severe abuse. And one of the things that I think it was Lyle, and forgive me because I'm not looking at the article, but one of the brothers said that one of the things that got him through over the years and helped him heal was letters he was receiving from people who were saying, oh my gosh, I was sexually abused and here's what happened to me. And I think that now in this time period that this video is being shot, we've gone through in the past year the idea of Me Too, right? And so the idea that, yeah, I was abused too. And this, I think, is part of what is spurring on, if you will, the idea that we need to look at cases like this a little bit more closely. And when I say this, I want to share with you that what's different with Lyle and Eric is they actually murdered their abusers. Now, I'm taking the supposition that they were abused. And the reason I say this is, as someone who was abused, I was abused by my mother, and I really relate to it. And it's almost like those of us who have been through any kind of emotional or physical abuse at the hand of an adult when we were children, what happens is we become like Highlanders because we can like see each other, right? We can kind of see, I can see it. If you spot it, you got it. So I can kind of see in people when they've been physically abused. And I can even see it last week I got a contract from someone who was going to do some gardening for me. And at the end of the contract, I ended up going a different way. But she said, you know, I really cherish peaceful environments and I don't like drama. And when you sign this, you agree to no drama. And if I experience drama, I reserve the right to charge you the full fee and quit the job. And I thought, well, that's somebody who probably should have killed her parents. You know? And I don't mean that like I mean it like, one of the things that we look at with Lyle and Eric is they lived that fantasy out of killing your abuser, of really taking them out. And I want to tell you, if you've ever been abused, I don't care who you are or what you are or where you come from. I know for me, I wanted my mother dead so bad that when she did die, I felt this almost a letdown because I didn't get a chance to do it. And then I felt guilt because I wanted her gone. So the thing I want to say to you is that, you know, yes, Lyle and Eric killed their parents, and yes, they murdered them. However, if the abuse is true, which I'm going to tell you from my own intuition, I have a knowing it is. Now, you know, if you think something else, that's totally fine. Just don't put down there a lot of critical stuff or I'll just block you. I don't really care because I don't want to hear it. Tell me your opinion. I'm always open. So as I say this to you, intuitively, I feel very strongly that they really were abused. And I'm going to share with you now, bear with me, because I'm going to, let me just see if I can, there we go. Okay. So one of the things that I want to do, and I have it on my computer here. Let's see, here it is. I want to share with you an excerpt from the cousin who testified about their sexual abuse, speaks out for the first time. This is Diane Vandermolen. She says she had no doubt Lyle and Eric Menendez were sexually abused. This is their first cousin. It is their mother's sister's daughter. So the mother, their mother, Kitty, had a sister, and then she had two daughters, and the cousins knew each other. So she also testified at the first trial. The sexual abuse and the nature of it was not allowed in the second trial. The first trial, it was a hung jury. The second trial, they got convicted on the murder because the prosecution was able to say it was all about the money, which I'm going to talk about in a minute with the abuse. But I first want to share with you what the cousins said. Okay. You know I yawn when I'm in state and stuff. Okay. The cousin of Lyle and Eric Menendez, and this was January 5th, 2017. It is credited in ABC News by Muriel Pearson and Alexa Valente. These are the two reporters on it. And they said, the cousin of Lyle and Eric Menendez, brothers who were convicted of the 1989 murders of their parents, says she has no doubt the brothers' parents sexually abused them. I knew they would never, ever have done what they did unless they felt they had no choice, that it was either them or their parents. Diane Vandermolen, who is speaking for the first time since she testified at their trial, told ABC News, I believe that very strongly. Lyle and Eric shot and killed their parents, Jose Menendez, 45, a wealthy entertainment executive, and Kitty Menendez, 47, at their Beverly Hills mansion on August 20th, 1989. At the time of the murders, Lyle was 21 years old and Eric was 18 years old. At their first trial, defense lawyer Leslie Abramson argued that Lyle and Eric shot their parents in self-defense because they feared their parents would kill them if they went public about the years of alleged molestation they suffered from their father. Now, I never understood this, guys, and I'm just going to say this to you. I don't understand why it's called molestation if it is rape. Do you know, like, he wasn't just feeling them up. He was sodomizing them. So this was not just, molestation. Okay. The first trial ended in a mistrial on January 13th, 1994, because jurors were deadlocked and unable to come up with a verdict. The brothers were found guilty of first-degree murder in 1996 after a second trial and sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Vandermolen spent summers living with the Menendez family and testified at the brothers' first trial that Lyle confided in her about the alleged sexual abuse in the summer of 1976. At the time, Lyle was just 8 years old and Vandermolen was 17. One night this is Vandermolen. One night I was in my room changing the sheets in my bed, and Lyle came in, Vandermolen told ABC News. He became very serious about asking me if he could sleep in the other bed next to mine, saying that he was afraid to sleep in his own bed because his father and him had been touching each other down there, indicating his genital area. Afterward, Vandermolen said she told Kitty Menendez what Lyle said. By her demeanor, now this is interesting. Vandermolen says this about her Aunt Kitty. By her demeanor, I could tell that she was not believing any of this, Vandermolen said. And she went downstairs, and Lyle had already gotten into the bed next to mine, and she went ahead and yanked him by the arm and took him back upstairs. I never heard anything else about it. Vandermolen says she believed young Lyle's story because she saw that his fear was real. He was scared to sleep in his own bed because he was afraid that his father was going to come in and molest him that night, said Vandermolen. Vandermolen said she assumed Kitty had put an end to the abuse because Lyle never spoke of it to her again. In hindsight, she said, I wish I could have been stronger about what Lyle was telling me so I could have done something to help them, she said. Lyle and Eric testified at the trial to their claims of their father's sexual abuse. He'd use objects, a toothbrush and some sort of shaving utensil brush. Lyle testified at their first trial. He used the word R-A-P-E, me. Vandermolen said his brothers, this is an interesting part. Vandermolen said the brothers would also fight over who got to sleep in the bed with their mom when their father was not home. This was when Lyle was 15 and Eric would have been 12. And when Jose wasn't supposed to be home that night, the two of them would argue over who got to sleep with their mom, Vandermolen said. I thought it was strange because, they were already teenagers. But again, because it was Kitty, I never questioned it. At the trial, Lyle testified that he would sometimes touch his mom elsewhere when he slept in her bed. Brian Anderson, Kitty Menendez's brother, dismissed the allegations. See, this is the thing, is that of course he did, unless they were in that house seeing what was happening. And this brother wasn't really there. This cousin lived there, so she knew what was going on. The idea that, Lyle, 48, and Eric, 46, were sent to different prisons, and all their appeals are exhausted. They've been, they're left to their own devices. But when asked why she chose to speak out for the first time in support of her cousins recently, Vandermolen said she wanted to defend them against the trial's prosecutors' claims that there had been no sexual abuse in the family. I know for 100% sure there was, Vandermolen said. Their privacy was everything to them. They were completely different people when nobody was around. And then Jose and Kitty would turn on the charm, and when they had people over, which wasn't very often. And when I say this to you, I'm going to come back to this in a second because there's also the aunt says something else. What I want to say about this, and I think that this is the key component here, is that cousin lived with them for a summer and saw it. Now, and there is a video of Kitty's sister. And this is Vandermolen's mother, okay? So Kitty's sister and the two daughters, Vandermolen being one of them, were interviewed more recently, and the video is quite riveting because the aunt, the Menendez brothers' aunt, said yes, they were abused. So here's the thing I want to share with all of you is that, yawn. The thing that I want to say, and this is the thing that I really feel deeply into, is that these boys attacked and killed their attackers. And, you know, I know for me, and I want to say this too, because I think I shared it a little bit on the live video, but sometimes I'm not specific enough. But, you know, I remember after my abuser died and, you know, I got money from Social Security, and man, did I blow that money. And I remember when my cousin got my grandmother to sign over all the property to him, you know, he ultimately died in a one-room SRO, and he hoarded everything, lost all the money, lost all the property. And all that time, my father kept saying to me, you know, you were entitled to that. And I said, you know what? It's blood money. I don't want it. And I think the thing that we have to remember here is that, again, going on the assumption, all right, and I'm taking this feeling that I really sense they were abused because I can see it. They have come across after this as decent people. They really speak their truth. And I've seen that when abusers die or get punishment, the abused doesn't always feel better. You know, it's kind of that cliche of like, you know, if you're beaten as a kid and you swear you're going to get back at that old man who did that to you, and then you get big enough and you're going to beat the crap out of them, and you realize, you know, this is not cool. Like, this is something that, you know, I'm not going to feel good. So even though you get rid of the abuser, right, you stand up to them. And I shared in a video I did on just the toolkit journey that I'm doing with my toolkit book and chakras and stuff. I shared about the idea that, you know, my father would make up rules when he wanted me to be a certain way. And it became a joke. You know, over time, I was like, is this just one of your rules? And he'd be like, yeah. So the thing I'm saying is that watching Lyle and Eric and the way they behaved after, of taking the money and buying a Rolex and buying a Porsche and spending $50,000 on a tennis pro. The reason I'm saying all this is because, to me, if I had just killed my abuser and I had felt as bad, and again, I'm feeling into that, if I had felt as horrifyingly awful, I mean, remember, these boys were severely abused by their parents. And I am saying this, and wait till I share with you in just a moment what the sister said, Kitty's sister. What I want to say to you is that when there's that kind of severe abuse, you know you're going to get caught. It's kind of like, well, I might as well enjoy it. And all of that money was withheld from them. And I want you to know that part of this whole story is, I think it was, forgive me if it was Eric or Lyle, because my brain, but they were accepted to UCLA is the point. And the father told them 2 or 3 days before and they were going to be going to college, but 2 or 3 days before, their father, Jose, said, by the way, I'm cutting you out of the will. You're getting nothing. And since you're going to that school, you're going to be sleeping at home. And this is like, I want you to imagine for a moment, this is like saying to a prisoner, okay, I'm going to let you go oh, wait a minute, you'll get nothing. He basically is threatening their life yet again. And I share this with you because I know for me, if I got away from my abuser the way they were about to get away and go to college, they were going to be living on campus and getting away. And then my abuser said, by the way, you're going to get no money and you're going to get nothing. So you're going to be an idiot and you have to come home so that I can sexually abuse you. That would be, and by the way, the other thing was that, and I think it was one of the cousins who said it later, that Jose had said, I'm going to kill you. I mean, he had said this time and time and time again. And so what he would do is more and more and more take from them and then have relations with them. So the reason I am saying all this is I really want you to get, as I say this, that, you know, this level of abuse, because they did away with their abusers, I don't feel that that the murders happened out of greed. I really don't. I think, and you can look at their prison sentences, you can even look in their faces. You can look at them and say, you know what, these are good kids. These are kids that were so abused by their parents. How can you explain how a father, and by the way, in the video that I saw with Kitty's sister and the two cousins, she said, when the boys, because it was the second floor, when Jose went to the second floor with the boys, the cousins said nobody was allowed to go up to the second floor as long as Jose was up there alone with the boys. I'm sorry, why would that be? What would be happening up there? What sounds would you be hearing? So as I'm saying this to you, I want you to really get that years and years and years and years of abuse, and somehow they were still coming out as like human beings. And instead of going out and taking a gun and going and killing everybody else with the rage, they killed their attackers. And to me, when I look at that, it's like, I think in the judicial system, we really need to look at, and when you look at somebody like I'm just thinking, when we talked about recently, we've been talking more about Chris Watts and just kind of in the past a little, but, when we look at him, it's hard to see, but I really feel as we unpack more and more about the way the mother was with the boy, we're going to see where he snapped. And by snapped, one of the things that's happening right now, and this gets me insane, I gotta be honest, is that, people are going, oh, it's this, and they're putting like a term on it, like narcissistic or bipolar or bipolar, blah, 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 blah. And you know what? The minute you put all that terminology on it, it's a way to say, well, see, I'm not like that. And when I say to people, we're all on the spectrum, we're all narcissistic, like, what is this whole need to kind of analyze it so that I can look at it? Why are you trying to do that? What difference does it make? Because I'm going to tell you something. It's not the narcissism we're looking at. It's the behavior after the treatment. And can you say that the Menendez brothers were narcissists? I would say they were so severely abused that they didn't get any sanity until people who read their testimony and saw what was being done to them. What was being done to these boys was horrific. And when people were reading it, they were writing them letters and going, oh my gosh, I relate to you. And this is, and they were going, oh my God, I'm not alone. The worst thing that can happen to anyone who's abused is to feel completely alone. It wasn't until my first, I want to say Alateen meeting, which my father insisted I go to. It wasn't until my first Al-Anon meeting that I really got that, that I wasn't alone, because people were sharing and I was going, oh my gosh, you went through this? Because when you've been abused, it is so isolating. So if you can imagine, they were about to get away and go to college, and then he's saying to them, oh, by the way, you have to live at home. More isolation, pulling them back. Just when you think you've gotten free, you're not free. So this is, he would never let them escape. And I spoke more about this the other day, and I'm going to share about the aunt in a second, and I don't want to make this too long a video, but I do want to say what I shared the other day is we have to remember the time period. Their first trial was right before O.J. Simpson and the hung jury. And this judge, I feel, in the first trial, they talked about abuse, There were people who even said later, oh my gosh, the father was crazy, he was this, he was that. But in the time period between the hung jury and their next trial, O.J. Simpson was acquitted. So it put pressure on this judge to say, well, there's actually no proof of the abuse. You never reported it. They did report it. 8-year-old Lyle told his cousin, who told the mother. What are you supposed to do at 8 years old? Do you really think an 8-year-old, hi, Mr. Police Officer, my father's abusing me? They're terrified. Can you imagine how isolating and lonely it is to be in that place? And I really, really think that we need to look at who we're putting behind bars, and not just putting people behind bars, but saying, is this person rehabilitatable? Originally, that's what it was for. Can we teach people how to behave? I think the prisons are filled with people who've been abused and never learned that they weren't alone. You know, and I have nothing against this, but I think at the end of the day, if you give someone a Bible and say, here's the Bible, read it, and you don't need to ever look at anything else again, I think we're kind of doing a spiritual bypass. I think we're forgetting that we're human beings first, and that yes, Jesus died for our sins in that sense, but at the end of the day, that doesn't answer the profound pain inside. Now, as I say that, some people, it heals. I can't, but if we're looking at reviticism, oh, these glasses are the wrong ones. Okay, here they are. If we're looking at, is it reviticism? Forgive me for not knowing the right name, but let's take a look really quick. I want to go to this article. Okay, and I really need to say, these boys really, I have to tell you, they looked like nice, clean-cut kids. And I want to say this to you, people will go, oh yeah, nice white kid. No, they're Hispanic, and they look like nice Hispanic kids. These are not, these kids, and they were committing some crimes. They were breaking into houses, which boys of that age were doing, but they were rebelling. And the more they rebelled, the more the danger was to them. Jose had threatened their life when they got arrested the time before. Okay, let's see. Now the aunt, Kitty's sister said, oh, excuse me, this is, forgive me, that was, I was talking about Kitty's sister's daughter before, the cousin. The aunt of Jose, Jose's sister, said they deserve to be set free. She's talking in this article about she actually testified for the defense for both brothers. She said, now check this out. She described her nephews as sweet and beautiful boys who were deeply troubled by the abuse they endured by their parents. Now, why would Jose, who was murdered, his sister say that? See, this is what we have to remember, is that adults are speaking up. People are speaking up, but it's like, oh, that's not enough. If my brother or sister was murdered, do you think about this for a minute? If your brother or sister is murdered by a child who says that they're abusing them, wouldn't you go, that child deserves to be in prison? But the sisters of both Kitty and Jose, the murdered parents, are going, no, they were very abused. Well, this is like, I'm sorry, but it's right there. At what point do we believe these people? And I do. Let's see. She was the sister of Jose Menendez and godmother to Eric Menendez. So this is very interesting. So she was the sister and godmother. Cano, that's her last name, then described her brother as a sick guy who had tremendous traumas from childhood. Abused people, abused people. He was not a bad person. He was a sick person. He had his traumas. Well, you know what? No, he was a bad person. Sorry, bad person. Because here's the thing. We all have opportunities as adults to recognize what we're doing. This guy just for years, and this is now, we're talking 10 to 15 years he was abusing these boys. Okay. She talks about, in this article, it talks about them being transferred to the same prison when they were kept for years and years and years apart because the judicial system decided that was how it should be. And then somebody said, why? There's no reason to keep them apart. They're not, so they brought them together, and the brothers see each other every day, even though they're very grateful for that. Cano, again, Jose's sister, said, although it's a great joy to know they're together, she still prays for them to be set free. Quote, They deserve to be free, end quote, she said. Quote, they are not criminals. They were in so much shock and fear of their own lives that that's what happened, end quote. Cano said she believed that when the brothers killed their parents, it was a defense mechanism, not a crime that was planned. It was not a cold blood kind of thing, she said. It was fear, total fear. That's her quote. She added, how would I feel if someone had abused me all my life and all of a sudden he's angry in front of me and he's coming to me? It's a defense mechanism we all have. You never know what you would do. And then it goes on, the killings and the subsequent trials traumatized the brothers' extended family, Cano said, adding that she's convinced that her son, Andy, died because he couldn't cope with the incarceration of his cousins with whom he was close. This is her own son. She says, and their cousin. I have no doubt in my mind that Andy is dead because of them, she said. Cano said that she's kept in touch with her nephews throughout the year, but not as much as she would like. She's also met both of their wives several times. They're actually married. They've always been in my heart, she said. Cano believes that through their suffering in prison, Lyle and Eric have matured and grown. Quote, the other good thing is they've been able to mature separately, she said. Sometimes we cling on to somebody else and we never mature. So she also said that Eric asked his aunt to send books, so she did. Okay, so she said about Eric, she says, he's really making sure that the prisoners know that there is a God that loves us, she said. That was marvelous to me because he never got that at home. Cano says she will continue to lean on her faith. You have to leave some things in God's hands, and God takes care of them, she said. So when I read this to you, I'd really love to hear what you think about this case and these boys now, based on the extended family really validating that that did happen to the boys. I'm interested to hear what you have to say about when we look at this kind of abuse and we look at people that did not become deranged. These boys did not become a Charles Manson. They actually killed their attackers, kind of thing. So I'd love to hear what you have to say. That's all for now. Please remember, say what you mean what you say, but don't say it mean, and try to be kind to each other. There's so little of that in the world right now. So I'm going to ask that you practice decorum. Remember that we're here to have a civil discourse with one another and to have a conversation. So if you're going to be screaming and yelling, that means all caps and lots of exclamation points, I may give you a chance and say, could you rephrase that? If not, then we probably will just you'll just get booted. I have people that are looking at it so that they can go, no. And I just want to let you know that I do have one person and she types in all caps and she's legally blind, and I am aware of that. So she contacted me and let me know that. So there you have it. But I'm sending all of you lots of love, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this case, and I'll be talking about it more as I get more information. Have a great afternoon, night, evening, week, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I'm sending you lots of love.